Applause surged through the arena, a jubilant cacophony that reverberated off the walls. Yet for George Strait, it felt more like a distant echo. He stood in the spotlight, feeling the warmth wash over him, but failing to connect with the excitement surrounding him. The cheers should have filled him with joy, but instead they pressed down on his heart, creating an ache he couldn't quite name. It felt as if he were performing on borrowed time, each song a reminder of the joy that had once fueled his passion. As he stepped backstage, the noise gradually faded into a comforting silence. He slumped into a chair, the adrenaline from the show dissipating. The familiar scent of polished wood and faint cologne filled his senses, but it felt like a trap rather than a refuge. Glancing down at his guitar, he hesitated, acutely aware of the emptiness that had replaced the passion he used to feel. Just then, something caught his eye, a crumpled envelope half hidden under a pile of promotional materials. He picked it up, curiosity nudging at him. Inside, he discovered a letter written in shaky, hopeful handwriting. It was from a young girl named Sophia Martinez, who expressed her belief that God had a message for him. Intrigued, he began to read. "Dear Mr. Strait," she began, "I know you're a famous singer, but sometimes I feel like people forget the love and faith that brought you there." The sincerity of her words plucked at the strings of his heart. She shared her struggles at home, but also her unwavering faith in him. "I think you need to remember how important your songs are, to find your roots again." As he absorbed each line, George felt the weight of her faith settle into his weary heart. Here was a girl, navigating her own difficult circumstances, reaching out to him because she believed in the power of his music. In her earnestness, she unknowingly drew him back to the simplicity of his beginnings, where music was a vessel for connection and storytelling. He recalled late nights spent with his mother, strumming his guitar in their small Texas home, their voices harmonizing with the sounds of family laughter. Those moments shimmered in stark contrast to his present isolation, where success had become overshadowed by loneliness. George turned to look out at the empty stage once more, where moments ago he had stood in polish and fame. Now it felt like a stage set for shadows rather than celebrations. He folded Sophia's letter and held it tight against his chest, feeling the stirrings of something deep within him, a longing to reconnect with the roots he had lost amidst the glitz and glamour. In that quiet moment, he realized he was at a breaking point, caught between the weight of his fame and the flickering flame of hope, ignited by a child's belief in him. Perhaps it was time to seek the melodies of hope that had once nourished his soul. The urge to rediscover those songs, to restore the connection with who he truly was, began to illuminate a path forward, one that called him home. The air was thick with the scent of earth and sun, as George Strait's mind wandered to his childhood in Petite, Texas, a small town filled with simple joys and shared experiences. He closed his eyes, letting nostalgia wash over him, transporting him to warm summer evenings spent on the porch, where laughter danced in the golden light and melodies enveloped him like a comforting blanket. He could see himself as a boy, guitar in hand, strumming under the watchful eye of his mother. Her soft voice would rise and fall with the music, threading joy and love into every note. Sessions spent with family around the fireplace seeped into his mind, where he first discovered the bond between music and emotion. "Play us something, George," she would encourage, a proud smile lighting her face. He filled those nights with tentative chords and youthful lyrics, his mother's laughter blending with his music, creating an atmosphere of warmth and acceptance. In those cherished moments, he felt invincible, the audience of one transforming him into a star. The echoes of childhood laughter from old friends who would play in the fields flooded his mind, a sweet tune of carefree days playing beneath the vast Texas sky. Their feet danced in the grass, racing toward the old oak tree, their voices mingling with the wind, an orchestra of innocence that contrasted sharply with the distance he felt from that simpler time now. Yet the joy began to fade, overshadowed by the weight of fame. Fame had pulled him away from that purity of experience, replacing friendship's warm embrace with glitzy obligations and demanding expectations. He had climbed the mountain of success, yet at the summit he felt colder and more alone than ever. Sophia's letter bolstered the urge to return to what mattered most. He realized this was a pivotal moment, a chance to rediscover the essence of who he was. He longed to reconcile with the memories he cherished and the values he had learned. What would his mother think of the man he'd become? Would she still smile, or would a deep sadness reflect her heart? With a newfound determination, George wandered through the dim backstage corridors that had witnessed countless performances. The further he walked from the spotlight, the clearer the voice of his roots grew, wrapping around him like a familiar song. He stood before an old wooden door marked Green Room. As it creaked open, memories flooded him. Musicians passed and their stories sewn into the very fabric of the walls. He longed for the genuine warmth that once intertwined with his music, a sharp contrast to the current isolation. "George!" A voice shattered his reverie, and he recognized Marta Rivera, his childhood friend, stepping into the room with familiar energy. "Marta!" he exclaimed, an authentic smile creasing his face, momentarily lifting the burden of his thoughts. "It's been a while. You look like you've been carrying the world on your shoulders. What's going on?" Her voice held concern, cutting through his facade of fame. He hesitated, feeling exposed. "Just thinking about the past, I guess. About home." Marta's expression softened, and she stepped closer. "Let me guess. You've been doing the famous singer dance again, and it doesn't feel fulfilling?" George nodded, the honesty weighing heavily between them. "Yeah, I feel lost. Sophia's letter made me realize how distant I've become from the music that once mattered. It was never just entertainment for me." Her gaze bore into his, capturing the essence of his struggle. "You're not the only one on this search. The world pulls us in so many directions, but your roots never really disappear. They just sit quietly, waiting for your attention." As Marta's words hung in the space between them, George felt hope flicker within him, illuminating a path after so long spent in shadow. Perhaps reconnecting with his past was just what he needed to navigate his future. "Why don't we take a trip back to Poteet?" Marta suggested, a glimmer of mischief dancing in her eyes. "Revisit old haunts, play out on the porch like we used to." Surprise washed over George, the lightness of her suggestion lifting his spirit. "You really think it'd help?" "I know it will. You need to remember where you came from before you can figure out where to go next," she asserted with conviction. George felt an undeniable pull toward the idea. The glimmers of nostalgia shone brighter now, igniting a yearning to rekindle lost connections, both with himself and his roots. As they exchanged stories and laughed, George found himself at a crossroads, a space where memory intertwines with aspiration. Rediscovering the music he once loved could pave the way for a future imbued with purpose, a chance to return to the man he used to be. "No more masks, George," he whispered to himself, the promise echoing in his thoughts. Sophia's belief had built a bridge back to himself, a road untraveled waiting for him to step forward into the light of clarity. With Marta beside him, he felt the first true stirrings of hope. It was time to embrace the melodies of his past, a new beginning forged in the embrace of familiar tunes and cherished memories. The summer sun hung low in the sky as George Strait and Marta drove along the familiar highways back to Poteet, Texas. The hum of the engine and the wind rustling through the open windows created a comforting soundscape, wrapping them in nostalgia. As the landscape shifted from the bustling city to the open fields dotted with wildflowers, George felt a pull at his heart, a beckoning to return to a place filled with memories. Marta hummed along to the radio, a familiar melody sparking laughter between them. "Remember when we belted this song out at the top of our lungs?" she teased, her eyes bright. George chuckled, the lightness in his chest a welcome change. "Thought we were the next big duo," he replied, a warm smile emerging as he remembered their off-key performances for imaginary crowds. As they approached Poteet, every landmark triggered a flood of memories. The old diner where they had shared countless milkshakes and fries stood proudly on the corner, the park swings where they once plotted their futures swaying gently in the afternoon breeze. Each familiar sight filled George with a sense of belonging that had eluded him for so long. Pulling into his childhood driveway, George's heart swelled with emotion. The house stood unchanged, sunny yellow with white trim, cementing a connection to simpler times. "Let's drop off our stuff and head to the porch," Marta suggested eagerly. "That's where it all starts." Once settled on the porch swing, the gentle creaking felt like a familiar melody, invoking memories of laughter and music. The evening air was laced with the scent of blooming jasmine as George picked up his guitar, strumming a few chords that seemed to demand attention. The strings felt reassuringly familiar, reminiscent of countless hours spent crafting songs under the Texas sky. "Play something that means something to you," Marta encouraged, leaning back with an expectant smile. Finding the courage, he began to strum a ballad from his past, a tune he hadn't revisited in years. As the notes filled the air, a wave of warmth surged through him, echoing back to moments of connection and comfort with his family. The melody relaxed him, coaxing out buried emotions that had long been dormant. "Where did that come from?" Marta asked in awe, eyes shining brightly after he finished. "That was beautiful, George. You still have it." George smiled, feeling a rush of pride and relief. "It feels good to play again," he replied, the truth resonating deep within him. Each note seemed to unlock a piece of his essence, reminding him of the musician he had always aspired to be. Eager for a change of scenery, they ventured to the park, where familiar faces greeted them. Old friends gathered under the oak tree, welcoming George with warmth that eased his heart. Laughter flowed, stories exchanged, and George felt the embraced spirit of togetherness that once fueled his passion. "George, it's really you," one friend exclaimed, disbelief turning to excitement as they hugged. Each interaction brought back memories, friendships and laughter woven into the fabric of his youth, pulling him steadily out of the isolation he had felt for so long. As evening descended, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, George felt a pull toward the porch once more. "How about a little concert?" he suggested, heart racing with anticipation. Marta grinned. "Let's show the town what they've been missing. You're back and it's time to share your music." Soon, villagers gathered, drawn to the sound of George's guitar. The porch became a stage, filled with friendly faces, eager to hear the music that had defined their shared past. Each song unfolded like a story, bridging gaps created by time and distance, allowing the genuine essence of his heart to shine through. With each note, George felt renewed and reconnected, not just to his audience, but to himself. The melodies echoed their shared experiences, enveloping him in the love and camaraderie he had sorely missed. Long into the evening, as the last song faded into the night, George felt a profound sense of fulfillment. He was not just a performer. He was a man welcomed back into the warmth of his community, rooted in the love and memories of his past. The journey home had just begun, but with each strum of his guitar, he caught glimpses of a future filled with purpose, a future illuminated by the hope rekindled among friends and family. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the town of Poteet in a soft glow as George Strait stepped off the porch, exhilarated and grounded by the warmth of the connection he had rediscovered. Voices echoed around him, friends, laughter, and applause that lingered in the air even after the last note had faded. He felt a renewed energy pulse within him, stirring an unfamiliar hope that had long been dormant, settling into a comfortable silence under the starlit sky. He took a moment to absorb it all. The past weeks had felt like a whirlwind, but something about returning home had anchored him, connecting him to his roots. Sitting on the porch with Marta and their friends, surrounded by the familiar sights and sounds, George felt the burdens of fame and isolation lift, if only momentarily. "I knew you still had it in you," Marta said, nudging him playfully. Her eyes sparkled, proud and supportive. "You need to keep playing here. Bring everyone together again." George smiled, contemplating the thought. "I never realized how much I missed this sense of community." His voice was steady, but the weight of this realization swept over him, pulling at the corners of his heart. "Let's make it a regular thing," she suggested. "How about live music nights? You could invite everyone. It'd be good for the town," she added. "And good for you to keep that fire burning." The notion bloomed in his mind, and as warm laughter wrapped around them, George felt the rhythm of a new beginning thrum within him. After years of touring and fame, he had drifted into a world where connection often felt superficial. Here, in Poteet, authenticity thrived, each laugh, each story filled with shared history and genuine emotion. "Just like the old days?" George asked, glancing toward Marta's eager expression. "Exactly, but better. You're not just a kid anymore. You have stories of your own now, real things to share." Her encouragement rippled through him, igniting a creative spark he hadn't felt in years. The idea of sharing his journey connected to his music became intoxicating. The next morning, inspired and determined, George woke early, the morning light spilling into his room, illuminating old photographs that reminisced his youth. He stood still for a moment, reflecting on the profound shift he had experienced in a matter of days, a reawakening to a purpose once obscured by the complexities of fame. He picked up his guitar and ventured outside. The sounds of the town waking echoed around him, the soft rustle of the wind through the trees, the distant laughter of children playing, and the inviting aroma of breakfast wafting from neighboring homes. Strumming a chord, he began crafting new lyrics filled with his recent experiences, the memories of old, and the paths that brought him back to this moment. "It's time to embrace the life I crafted with others," he murmured, the realization becoming a mantra. With determination, he sat on the porch, the cool wood beneath him grounding him as he poured his heart into his craft. He weaved personal stories and reflections into the music, hoping to inspire, connect, and heal. Over the next few days, with Marta by his side, they organized music nights throughout the summer. The little porch became a hub for old and new friends, a collision of laughter, love, memories, and melodies that transcended time. George not only played, but he also invited others to share their stories. Neighbors brought snacks, set up chairs, and turned the once quiet porch into a vibrant gathering place. Children danced, elders reminisced, and the air filled with joyous harmonies interspersed with warmth and connection. Each gathering deepened George's understanding of the community that had shaped him. They became akin to participatory concerts. Everyone was welcome, and no one went unheard. One night, a gentle summer rain began to fall. Instead of scattering indoors, the audience remained, laughter rising above the pitter-patter of droplets. George continued to play, heart full as he watched his beloved town embrace the reminder of their youth and creativity, ignited by a shared vulnerability that was palpable. "We're all here together," George called out between songs, his voice steady yet brimming with emotion. "Let's keep this feeling alive. Music binds us, connects us. It tells our story." The crowd responded with cheers and laughter, sealing an unspoken promise to support one another. As the weeks turned into a month, George felt an emotional upsurge. Each performance transcended the act of playing, evolving into a celebration of life, love, and shared histories. A buzz began to circulate beyond Petite as curiosity grew about the musician who had returned to his roots. George received calls from old friends in the industry, asking him to consider recording again, but this time he felt a sense of clarity that had previously eluded him. The thought of returning to the stage, not just as a figure draped in fame, but as a storyteller, filled him with anticipation. The music nights had shifted something within him, reigniting a passion for creating that he hoped to share with a wider audience. He envisioned an album reflecting this experience, a blend of old and new, an invitation for listeners to reconnect with their own stories. One evening, as they wrapped up a successful music night, Marta turned to him, her eyes shimmering with excitement. "This is just the beginning, George. You're not just bringing joy back to others, you're bringing it back to yourself too." Her words settled in his heart, a profound affirmation of the journey he had embraced. With renewed purpose, he glanced out at the gathered community, friends, laughter, and love shimmering in the evening light. He was no longer just George Strait, the country musician. He was George, the storyteller, the friend, the musician whose roots ran deep into the rich soil of his beloved Petite. The shadows of doubt faded, replaced by hope, connection, and the thrill of a new adventure. Through the simple act of sharing music, George had birthed not only a revival of his art, but a homecoming of the heart. It was a rebirth done not alone, but with a community woven into every note and lyric. The journey home had sculpted him anew, reminding him that where he belonged was not just a place, but an embrace of those who believed in him all along. As summer danced into the vibrant hues of fall, George embraced the change alongside his burgeoning career as a storyteller. The music nights had revived something profound within him, yet shadows of his past loomed just beyond the edges of his newfound joy. The whispers of fame still echoed in his mind, the struggles with self-doubt, the loneliness that had crept in when the lights dimmed. Despite the support of his community, he sensed that a reckoning was looming. One crisp autumn evening, as the golden leaves crunched beneath his boots, George found himself sitting alone on the porch. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows that seemed to intertwine with memories, failure, pride, and the haunting expectation that had once wrapped around him like a suffocating tether. Marta, sensing the heaviness enveloping him, approached quietly, taking a seat beside him on the porch swing. "You've been awfully quiet lately," she observed, concern etching her voice. "It's just, I keep thinking that maybe this is all too good to be true," George admitted, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "What if it doesn't last? What if I wake up one day and it's all gone again?" With steady resolve, Marta replied, "But it's real, George. What you've built here is real. The love, the connection, it's something you forged together with everyone standing by your side." Faint sunlight spilled through the leaves, creating a mosaic of golden light and shadow on their faces. "I get that," George said, running a hand through his hair. "But I built my career on this idea of success, and every time I felt on top of the world, I'd crash down hard. There's a part of me that's terrified the same thing will happen here." Silence enveloped them momentarily, a space where their words hung heavy, as Marta considered his fears. "Why don't you talk about it? What you tend to bury just keeps coming back." He sighed, weighing her words. "I guess I thought I could outrun my past," he murmured. "All those years chasing #1 hits, feeling like I was always expected to deliver perfect songs, perfect performances. When I didn't, it felt like I was drowning." Marta leaned closer, voice softening. "You're not that man anymore, George. You've grown. You've found your voice again, not to impress the world, but to touch it. Letting this fear go could be your biggest song yet." As the day faded into twilight, something shifted inside him. George realized that perhaps the confrontation he struggled with was not only that of his past, but also with the future he sought. What if he dared to face the shadows? What if he let go of the burden of expectations and just embraced his authentic self? Days passed, and finally, driven by newfound resolve, George decided it was time to confront his fears head-on. He gathered friends and family for another music night, but this time he had something more profound planned. Inspired by the healing power of sharing, George set aside a section of the evening for vulnerability, a segment he called Story Time, where he would share his journey between songs. As the night approached, excitement buzzed in the air, and so did apprehension. When the time came, George cleared his throat, the porch filled with eager faces illuminated by soft string lights. With the stars as his witnesses, he began to lay bare not just his triumphs but also his vulnerabilities, the struggles of loneliness, the looming shadow of failure, and the changing tides of his career. "The truth is," he began, voice steady yet emotive, "there were times when I lost sight of who I was. I became just a name, just a voice, and in chasing that success, I neglected the heart of why I started playing music in the first place." His words flowed like a river, tracing the contours of his heart. He spoke about his years of living in the limelight, the moments of elation tainted by the weight of expectations and constant comparison. Each story resonated through the crowd, connecting them in shared understanding. Laughter mingled with solemn reflections as he spoke of heartache, rebirth, and the power of finding one's way home. He shared the letters he received from Sophia, his late wife, that had moved him with their gentle reminders of love and purpose. "She reminded me that music is about more than the fame. It's about the connection we find in each other's stories," he said, leaning into the emotion of his journey with a sincerity rooted in authenticity. The audience listened intently, tears shimmering in their eyes, as George unfolded the pages of his life in that sacred space. When he finished, silence enveloped them, a reverent stillness where each person felt the weight of his truth. Finally, Marta stood. "Everyone, let's give George a round of applause, not just for his music, but for sharing this part of himself," she called out, her voice strong and resonant. The crowd erupted in applause, cheers rising into the night. George felt a warmth envelop him, relief washing over his fears. He recognized that he had faced the shadows, allowing light in to illuminate the path forward. After the cheers waned, he picked up his guitar, the instrument cradling familiar strings between his fingers. Drawing from the well of emotion, he strummed a new song, a blend of vulnerability and resilience. The melody soared and the audience joined in, the sound a beautiful choir of connection and healing. As he played, George realized that the confrontation with himself was not the end, but a beginning, a rebirth into a more profound existence intertwined with the lives that shaped him. He understood that he belonged in a world of authenticity, where the shadows no longer ruled but taught him the paths of compassion, friendship, and community. Tonight was a significant turning point, not only in his career, but in his life. The shadows that had haunted him began to fade, replaced by a new narrative, one of hope, connection, and vulnerability, embraced by the very community that loved him. And as the final chords rang out, he felt a sense of belonging that proved, perhaps for the first time, that he truly belonged somewhere deeper than the stage. He belonged in the heart of his people. As the last notes of George's song lingered in the air, their sweet resonance embraced the gathered crowd in a warm cocoon of shared experience. The faces, illuminated by the soft glow of porch lights, reflected joy, healing, and understanding. George sensed the connections forged between him and his audience, a blend of love and support that had sewn the fabric of their lives together. Weeks rolled by, and the music nights evolved into a cherished tradition in Poteet. Each gathering not only showcased George's talents, but also became a venue where stories were shared, problems discussed, and laughter echoed freely. The local paper featured them, dubbing it Porch Nights, an event that drew folks from neighboring towns, creating an even larger tapestry of community. In the quiet intervals between performances, George spent time reminiscing with old friends and reconnecting with the rhythms of life that had once seemed lost to him. He began to write more, diving deeper into creating music that didn't shy away from his past, but reflected the authenticity of his experiences. Melodies shaped from moments of vulnerability transformed into lyrics that resonated with the human condition. Amidst the exhaustion of sharing his heart through song, George found solace in the moments of silence afterward. On those tranquil nights, the sounds of cicadas filled the air while he sat on the porch, his guitar resting comfortably against his knee. Marta often joined him, both of them soaking in the peaceful ambiance of home. "Have you thought about where you want to take this?" Marta asked one evening, her eyes sparkling under the starlit sky. "It feels like there's something brewing inside you." With a reflective smile, George replied, "I think I want to record an album, something that tells our collective stories. I want people to hear that it's okay to be vulnerable, to face fears, and to find strength in letting others in. It's about more than me, it's about us." Marta's enthusiasm bubbled over. "That's an incredible idea. Share your journey and the journey of everyone here. You've always known how to connect those pieces through your music." With her encouragement echoing in his ears, George began to work diligently with local producers who shared his vision. They crafted songs that intertwined his past with celebratory tunes of the present. Together they captured the essence of Porch Nights, translating the emotions stirred by the audience into powerful melodies that spanned genres, a mixture of country, folk, and even traces of gospel. As they recorded, George found himself weaving in stories from the folks he had met. Each track became a tribute, a small monument to the lives intersecting with his, friends who had chased dreams, lost loves, and the shared laughter that defined their corner of the world. The collaboration turned into something deeply meaningful for him. With every lyric penned and every note recorded, George rejuvenated not just his career, but the way he viewed his artistic voice. The recordings became his lifeline, stitching together the patches of his history with threads of hope and resilience. Finally, after months of hard work, the album was ready to be released. George felt the familiar rush of nerves as he prepared for the launch, a mixture of vulnerability and excitement coursing through him. They decided to host the album premiere on the porch, where it all began, a full-circle moment that celebrated his journey alongside everyone who had supported him. On the day of the event, anticipation hung thick in the air. The porch overflowed with people, laughter ringing out amid the aroma of barbecue wafting over from the backyard. George looked out at his old friends, mingling with newer faces, and the love that danced between them nourished his spirit. As Martha announced the start of the premiere, the energy shifted. Cell phones out, smiles wide. The porch buzzed with a contagious excitement. George stepped forward, feeling the steadiness of his guitar, his heart pounding in time with the rhythm of the moment. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his voice steady. "This album isn't just a collection of songs. It's a celebration of every one of you. The stories we've shared, the struggles we've faced, and the joys we've found in each other's company." As he began to play, the first notes rang out into the night, and he felt it, an embracing warmth from the crowd, unifying them like a family. Each song poured forth from a place of raw honesty, reflecting his journey alongside theirs. As the final chords resonated, the audience erupted, cheers and applause exploding into the air. George closed his eyes, breathing in the deep satisfaction of fulfillment and connection. In those moments, he understood a profound truth. Success wasn't measured by the number of charts topped or awards won. It was about the hearts touched, the laughter shared, and the healing that came from vulnerability. In the embrace of joyous accolades and familiar faces, A deep sense of peace washed over him. George had stepped into the brighter side of a life once overshadowed by doubt. He felt accepted not because of his fame, but because of his willingness to share his journey, to be real, to be human, and to offer a piece of himself to everyone who cared to listen. As the night deepened, the laughter flowed freely, and George realized he was home, not just in the physical space of Poteet, but within himself. He had transformed, shedding the constraints of fear and expectation, stepping into a new world full of possibility. In the laughter and delight of porch nights, George Strait found his true self and the affirmation that he was never alone. There was an entire community around him, forever woven into the narrative of his heart. Together, they celebrated not just the music, but the essence of life, full of joy, pain, and the beautiful connections that turned moments into memories. As the echoes of applause faded into a serene night, George stood on the stage, his heart full. The community that had gathered, filled with friends and neighbors, offered something priceless: support, connection, and a shared appreciation for the music that had sparked this deep bond. The release of his album, more than a personal triumph, reflected the collective spirit he had rediscovered. With momentum on his side, George felt compelled to extend the spirit of porch nights beyond Poteet. An idea blossomed in his mind: the Stories We Share tour. This tour would celebrate community storytelling through music, visiting small towns where connection thrived, but where talents often went unnoticed. Gathering passionate musicians from the porch nights, George mapped a route that steered them toward towns that welcomed openness and creativity. He contacted old friends and local venues, eliciting enthusiastic responses. Excitement surged within him as they planned performances in parks, community centers, and other intimate spaces. On launch day, George felt a mix of nerves and anticipation. He took a moment to absorb the smiles of his fellow musicians, assuring them with simple words, "Whatever happens, we are here to share this journey together." They each nodded, understanding the significance of this collaboration. As the tour unfolded, George's heart brimmed anew with joy. Each night, as he spoke to the audience, he felt the connection deepen. "We're here to share our stories," he proclaimed, watching as eager smiles greeted him. The music flowed like a river, weaving tales of heartache, love, and universal experiences that resonated within every listener. Between performances, George engaged with locals over meals, hearing their anecdotes and laughter amidst shared bites of comfort food. Each town enriched him with diverse narratives, creating a bond that transcended borders. Together, the crew fostered transformation, exploring new friendships while breathing fresh life into the pieces of music they had created. The blend of camaraderie and collective storytelling struck a harmonious chord, reinforcing their message of hope and belonging. As the final night of the Stories We Share tour approached, they set the stage in a beautiful field beneath a canvas of stars. George felt an anticipatory thrill. "Tonight isn't just about music," he said, addressing his friends. "It's about the connection we've all built. Let's cherish this one last time together." Under the evening sky, the mood was electric. The audience gathered, radiating warmth and excitement as they shared final moments of bonding. George poured his heart into every performance, grounding himself in the essence of each song, feeling coated by the raw honesty in their lyrics. After the final round of applause, he understood a vital truth: life was a journey, and this experience was only the beginning. The tour had sparked a renewed sense of purpose within him, one rooted in authenticity and community. It wasn't just about his story anymore, it was about every soul they had encountered along the way. As they celebrated together, George felt enveloped by a stronger sense of belonging, realizing that these connections would transcend miles and time. With hearts intertwined, he and his fellow musicians were now part of something greater, a movement that continued to inspire and uplift through the power of shared music. With new dreams budding on the horizon, he knew the road ahead was alive with promise. They would carry forth their stories, not only through their songs but through the lives they touched. United in their journeys, George Strait and his companions pledged to keep the spirit of connection alive, creating a new chapter steeped in love, hope, and the power of the human experience.